Hi, welcome to what will be the first video I'm putting up from the new brewing garage after the house move. Not a lot been happening brewing wise. I've got sour beer going away in the fermenting fridge behind me. But that's not what today's about. I wanted to talk to you today about airlocks. Now, I'm forever seeing it on social media where people are reliant on airlocks. They use them for everything, to know if fermentation's happening, if it's finished, everything. Let's just deal with a couple of airlock myths today. So people constantly say you need an airlock. No, you don't. If you're doing a really long fermentation, something like that, yes, it might make sense to use an airlock. If you're barrel aging something for a year, definitely you want an airlock in there. If you're doing a standard ale fermentation over in 2 to 3 weeks, there is literally no need at all for an airlock. Okay? I'll say it again. There is no need for an airlock. By all means use them if you want to. I'm not knocking anyone that uses them, but don't think you need them and don't think they tell you anything. If you've got an airlock on the top of a fermenter and it is chugging away like a steam train, then you can probably safely say that fermentation is happening. That is the only time the airlock will tell you anything. It is the only time you can reliably get any information from that airlock. All bubbles in an airlock tell you is there are bubbles in an airlock. The slightest pressure change will cause bubbling to happen in the airlock. A temperature change will cause bubbling to happen in an airlock. Knocking the fermenter or any process that causes any gas to be released at all will also cause bubbles in an airlock. So just because there's bubbles in an airlock, unless it is chugging along like a steam train, it means nothing. So often I see people questioning, oh well, my airlock stopped bubbling, has fermentation finished? Well, your airlock stopped bubbling, does that mean the temperature's dropped? Does it mean the pressure's changed? Does it mean your lid's no longer sealed properly? There's only one way to tell what's happening with your fermentation, and that's to take a gravity reading. So when you're there asking people for help on social media, remember, we're not interested in how long your airlock's been bubbling or not bubbling. We don't care if it was chugging along like a steam train for 3 days and now it's stopped. Has it finished? Check the gravity. Fermentation is finished when you get a stable gravity for 24 to 48 hours. If you manage to take 2-3 days worth of gravity readings and it stayed exactly the same, fermentation's finished. It doesn't matter if you've got airlocks in your airlock bubbles. It doesn't matter if you've got no airlock bubbles. If the gravity's still going down, fermentation's still happening, even if you've got no bubbles. It doesn't matter if you've got bubbles. If the gravity has been stable for 3 days, it's finished. So the way to find out how your fermentation is going and if it is finished is solely to take a gravity reading, not to look at airlocks. So why do I say they're not needed? You look at many pro brewers and you can see videos of this all over YouTube. Most of them not only don't use airlocks, they don't even have lids on their fermenters. Now I've heard people turn around and tell me in the past, oh well, it's in a brewery, it's a sterile environment and everything. No. Anyone who's been in 98% of breweries will know that they are very far from a sterile environment. Yes, you might have a fly zapper up on the wall or whatever, but honestly, they are open to the air. Air is still changed normally between the brewery and outside, and there's these huge fermenters with thousands of litres, no lid inside. Probably the best known video to demonstrate it is a fermentation of Bigfoot, which is a great big barley wine, and you can literally see the yeast head growing and sinking as the day-night cycle goes and it warms up slightly. Now if you don't use a lid, you might get some more esters in your beer, some more fruity character. If you use a lid, just don't put an airlock in it. That will get rid of that. So I haven't used an airlock for about 5 years, and I'm not going to start using one now, apart from in the special occasions I mentioned right back at the start. If I'm doing a fermentation or I'm going to have beer in a vessel for months, then yes, I will bother. But the rest of the time there is no need. The fermentation produces CO2. CO2 is heavier than air. You're left with a blanket of CO2 over the top of your beer. As long as you're not wafting a lid and blowing all that CO2 out of your fermenter, then you've got a blanket of CO2 protecting your beer from the oxygen. It doesn't need an airlock. So remember, airlocks, totally optional. Unless they're chugging like a steam train, they don't tell you anything, and you can brew very good beer without ever using one. Anyway, that's it from me today. Just a couple of thoughts on airlocks. If you want help on social media, mention the gravity when you're asking if it's finished and we'll be able to tell you. Tell us what's happening with your airlock. The first thing we're going to say is, what's the gravity? Cheers everyone, have a good day.